with more on this is Deneen Borelli. She's a fellow with the Black conservative public policy group Project 21 and a Fox News contributor. And Christopher Hahn, a Democratic strategist and former aide to Democratic Senator in New York, Chuck Schumer. All right, panel. So, it's funny the way Greg puts that, but it's true because the report outlines a long list of America's human rights violations. And the thing that interested me, Deneen, was that President Bush refused to submit such a report to this group, saying, we're not going to do this because it's going to give fuel to our enemies who are going to use it, saying, look at all the things America does when countries like North Korea don't do it, and would be used essentially as a tool against us by our enemies. President Obama reversed course.
Yeah, well, Bush was correct in that assessment. But listen, this is the Obama apology tour on steroids. And it's outrageous, I think. This is a perfect example of him ignoring that our economy is tanking, unemployment keeps going up, and we have individuals who think this is the greatest thing on earth, but it's a human rights audit, which is ridiculous because this is the freest, most generous country on the planet.
The report itself does point to the fact that the United States has systems in place to deal with these injustices. It doesn't just indict us for things that, nobody's going to argue that there isn't predatory lending in the United States. No one's going to argue that there isn't predatory.
Why do we need the UN to tell America how to deal with human rights?
We want to be out there telling people how to use human rights. We have to take a close look at what we do here. And listen, the arc of progress favors justice. The United States is constantly improving. No one's going to say that we are perfect. We are striving to be perfect.
But why do we need the UN to tell us what to do about human rights?
Like I said, we want to be out there telling the world what human rights are. We have to examine our human rights system and show the world that we are capable, that we understand that there are some injustices here, but this is how we deal with it here in America. We're trying to work towards a more perfect union here in the United States.
Go ahead,
this is a book report to the UN. That's all it is. And what you're outlining is just ridiculous because, listen, these so-called violations are nothing in comparison to Iran, Iraq, Venezuela, Cuba.
But we should hold ourselves to a much higher standard than Iran, Iraq, Cuba, Saudi Arabia, Cameroon,
but let me ask you this. Here's the thing that caught my eye. So after we submit our report, there's a group in the UN that's going to get together and they're going to issue recommendations for what should be done to the United States. This group is made up of 3 countries. France, all right, Japan, and Cameroon. Cameroon, which is one of 13 countries of the 47-member Human Rights Council, ranked not free.
Hey,
not
listen,
free.
Megyn,
Cameroon is going to tell the United States how to improve its human rights?
Every panel of judges has the Russian judge at the Olympic who's going to give you an 8 when everybody else is giving you a 10. Cameroon is. We're not necessarily going to take the result. This is not a judging process. Cameroon is not going to tell us what we should or shouldn't do.
Listen, I have a report for the UN. It's called the Declaration of Independence. That's the report that should have been filed with the UN.
I agree, and I believe.
How much time and resources went into this report? It's ridiculous.
I'm glad you brought up the Declaration of Independence because I think it points to a very important fact that we ignore often, that rights are endowed by the Creator, not because you were born beyond some invisible line that we created years ago. Rights were endowed by the Creator in those life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And we as Americans strive to give that across the world, across this nation, and we work very hard.
But do you really think, Christopher, that countries like North Korea and China are going to be so inspired by our submitting this report that they too are either going to do it or look at their own human rights record?
I don't think so. Megyn, I'm not out here saying that they're going to look at this report and saying, oh, they're inspired by America. But, we have to judge, judge not least you yourself be judged. We're out there judging. We're out there pointing the finger. We're out there saying, hey, you have to improve here, 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 and here. And we understand, we acknowledge that we have to improve in certain places too. Now, this goes to a lot of Obama's style as a former attorney, as a constitutional law professor. Put out your flaws, put them out there, let people know that they're there and that we're working on them, and that we have a process.
Deneen, this is from the Washington Times. They say, dictatorships, authoritarian regimes, and theocracies competing for legitimacy on the world stage have now been handed a potent new weapon, the kind of assessment they would never offer about their own governments. Because now they can hold this up and say, look, the United States discriminates against the disabled, homosexuals, women, Native Americans, blacks, Hispanics, those who don't speak English, Muslims, and on it goes.
It's so not true. And again, I bring up the Declaration of Independence. What the UN should be doing is focusing on Iran. They're getting away with everything. Why can't they put their placements on that?
The report does not say that the United States discriminates against these people. The report says that there is discrimination against these people in the United States, and the United States has a policy to deal with politically.
Will
That's what the
Iran
report
parse
says.
that language?
Listen, I read the Washington Times, and I started to read. I read a lot of the report itself. The report itself
Whereupon
basically
your
says,
eyes glazed over.
it's a long report, 29 pages, but it's which is not that long. But when you look at the report itself, it shows that it's not that there's institutional discrimination in the countries that you mentioned. There's institutional discrimination going on. There's no institutional discrimination by the United States government that's sanctioned by the government to discriminate.
Some
here.
of the people
we have a
involved in
process
this
to deal
report-
with individuals discriminating against them. And
Now,
that's what these
I
countries
want
need
our
to
viewers
find
to
out.
know, okay? According to Amnesty International, Cameroon, government opponents, journalists, and human rights defenders were arrested, detained, and tried for offenses relating to criticism of the government. These are the people who are now going to tell us how to behave when it comes to human rights. All right, good debate.
Nice
I
to see
appreciate
you.
it, Christopher and Deneen. Coming up, folks, a